Today we get to talk about hormones. Hormones are what makes our bodies unique as women, right? We are blessed to have estrogen and progesterone inside our bodies to allow us to reproduce and have babies. And here is my son Ben, who wanted to come in and be in his YouTube video sensation. But so as we approach midlife here, and we're either approaching it or in the middle of it or post-menopause, and on the other side of this, it's so important to understand what our bodies are doing during this time so we can get a better grip on our hormones and understand the changes our bodies are going through, so then we don't feel crazy going through this time in our life. And not only that, but also understanding how we can change our nutritional needs and why it's so important to change our nutritional needs in order to lose weight, keep it off, but also that also helps with menopausal symptoms too. So I can't tell you how many times over the last 20 years or more in my clinic, I'll just throw out a 47, 48-year-old female that comes in and says, Nicole, I don't know what's going on. I'm gaining weight, even though I'm working out hard, I'm exercising, and I'm eating healthy. Fix me, right? So I get that all of the time. And until I hit perimenopause myself, I didn't truly understand the frustrations of the women that I was seeing. In fact, we used to tell women calories in, calories out, right? Just exercise more, eat less. Like that was the answer. That's what we knew to say and what we knew to tell our patients. But the research is better now, and we're starting to understand more of what's causing the weight gain in midlife. And more importantly, how to fix that so we can lose the weight and improve our health. So let's talk about perimenopause first, okay? And let's even step back further. So menopause is the time in our life that we define menopause by not having a period for 1 full year, okay? So this average age of menopause is 51. But some women will go through menopause at 45, some women at 55, 56. So we can be in perimenopause, which is that time before menopause, before our periods actually stop completely. This can be up to 10 years for some women, up to a few years for other women. So that's a long time, right? Like if you're going to stop your periods at age 45, that means starting at 35, you can potentially be in perimenopause. And we are noticing more and more women starting perimenopause early, like at 35. So if you're falling on that lower age range, definitely all these symptoms that I'm going to talk about can be related to changing hormones. It's definitely more common to see women going through perimenopause in their 40s because that average age of menopause is 51, okay? But during perimenopause, estrogen and progesterone, which are our two female hormones, okay, typically in a natural, normal menstrual cycle, okay? So estrogen tends to peak that first 14 days of our cycle and then drops. And then progesterone will peak that second half of our periods, like day 14 to 30. So that's also why during different parts of our cycle, we feel a little bit different. So I found it very interesting that I like to call estrogen the extrovert. And the reason for that is when the first 14 days of our cycle, estrogen actually tends to increase our energy. Women that are playing around with intermittent fasting can definitely do some longer fasts during this first half of our period. We tend to feel more creative. We tend to want to be out and socialize and have more energy. Progesterone, though, in that second half of the cycle, Progesterone is kind of like an Ativan. If you guys have ever heard of Ativan, it's like a calming substance. So the second half of our period, our menstrual cycle, we tend to maybe want to stay home more. We don't want to socialize as much. We feel a bit calmer. Okay, so when that progesterone is spiking that second half of our menstrual cycle, that's tends to be what progesterone does. It's actually calming. So progesterone rises during the second half of our menstrual cycle, and then it starts to drop. And when it drops like that, which is usually that week before our period, that's what tends to make us more emotional and cry because we don't have that progesterone on board. And we feel anxious and we're not sleeping as well. So if you notice these fluctuations through your cycle, that's because estrogen and progesterone are cycling. Also, with intermittent fasting, it's never good to intermittent fast as long or really as much that week prior to our period, because our body needs us to kind of slow down, have slower, lighter workouts, and it just craves and needs a little bit more healthy carbs during that time too. So so that's what our period is doing, these perimenopausal and perimenopausal years. But once we hit perimenopause, that estrogen and progesterone kind of just does its thing. So on average, estrogen and progesterone are slowly declining over that 10-year period. Okay, so that's what brings on the hot flashes, night sweats, mood swings, weight gain, and a whole other slew of symptoms. And you might notice 1 month you felt fine, and the other month you're just struggling with hot flashes and night sweats and feeling more irritable. That's because during the time when our hormones are steadily decreasing, you might have a month where your body's squirting out a little bit more estrogen, a little bit more progesterone through that month. So you should start to gradually notice your periods get further and further apart. However, some women don't notice that and notice heavier periods or more cramping. So that's never a good thing. If you're bleeding more, then you want to make sure you're going to your doctor or your PA or your NP to get checked out there. And as we're going through perimenopause and all these symptoms are popping up, it's also causing us to gain weight. Why is that? Okay, so estrogen and progesterone have so many good benefits and have protected our bodies from things like osteoporosis, heart attacks. Okay, so as these levels start to drop, our insulin levels start to go up. That is what's causing us to store our weight, okay? The more excess weight we start to carry, our body actually has more estrogen in those fat cells. So some women that are carrying too much excess weight and too much excess fat are producing more estrogen. And the studies do show that women that are overweight or obese tend to have worse perimenopause and menopause symptoms because they, instead of their levels falling like they should normally through this time in our life, they're not falling as quickly, and then they're having worse hot flashes and night sweats and mood swings. So important for so many reasons for our health to lose weight and to maintain our healthy weight. But also through this time in our life when we're trying to control these menopausal symptoms. So when our body is storing this excess weight through menopause, it's storing it in the worst place possible. It's all around our middle section, the menopause middle. It's all around our tire. Okay, that's called visceral fat. Visceral fat is different than fat like on our arms, like back in here, okay? That fat is different than visceral fat that's in our bellies. That visceral fat is also internal. So it's like hugging our organs and starting to it starts to grow not only underneath our skin where we can see it, but it's also growing on the inside, collecting in our liver, collecting inside our visceral organs. That's not good because that increased waist to hip ratio does put us at increased risk of diabetes, high blood pressure, heart attacks, and strokes. So it is so important to lose this visceral fat to decrease our other health risks. The best way to do this is by looking at your fat and at your macros, basically. Actually, there's two ways to help with this visceral belly fat. So when you're looking at your foods and your nutrition, following the fat and the carbs and the protein, which are your macronutrients, we actually want to start upping our healthy fats during menopause years. Dropping down the carbs, protein can pretty much stay the same. But those healthy fats allow our bodies to then use our fat for energy rather than storing it as much. Okay, so not only is it important to dial in on the nutrition piece, but it's also important to, if you've never considered to do intermittent fasting, I would encourage you to do that. That is something that I work with my clients in my 12-week health coaching program. But intermittent fasting is definitely, the research is there really showing the benefits of what our bodies are doing in the fasting mode. And many women use intermittent fasting just as their lifestyle. And the benefits of our bodies when we're in the fasting mode allows us to use our fat stores as energy. It also cleans up all the, I like to call them the garbage cells, or a process called autophagy. It kind of cleans up the cells in our body to get rid of them. Again, there's so many good risks with intermittent fast, or so many good benefits with intermittent fasting, as far as decreased cancer risk, decreased risk of diabetes, heart attack, stroke. So if you have more questions about intermittent fasting, shoot me some messages, okay? Because this is a hot topic. And I used to think when I had first heard about intermittent fasting years ago, I thought it was just another diet fad, like keto or Mediterranean diet, or, I thought it was just this specific diet. But actually, the research shows more and more benefits for intermittent fasting, especially during the midlife women, during perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. It gets easier and easier to gain weight through our midlife, and it keeps going even after menopause. So it's so important to understand the nutrition piece and the intermittent fasting piece, because that's going to get you the best results there. Okay, so let's also talk about, we all know some of those basic symptoms of menopause, and the most troubling too. But one thing I also wanted to bring up about these menopausal years is increased anxiety, increased depression. Actually, the suicide risk in women is the highest between the ages of 45 to 55. Ladies, that's us, a lot of us, in this age frame, okay, in this time frame, because our wonky hormones, that estrogen and progesterone going up and down and decreasing and then up one time, also affects our sleep. Our sleep affects our moods. Then we're anxious, we can't sleep. Then, some of us go to wine. That makes us not sleep even more. So it's so important to get good sleep, exercise, lose some of this excess weight, especially around our belly fat. But all these things help with our mental health as well. So many women don't understand what is going on with their bodies through menopause, and I think that just scares us more. And so many women will come to me during this time frame with all of these symptoms, and know that physically something is wrong with them. We do labs, we check them over, medically everything is fine. And then up till more recently, we haven't really had that great of answers, but now we're understanding that nutrition piece. So don't ever go to the doctor and tell them, as a menopausal woman, that you're having all these symptoms. Don't ever let them gaslight you. Don't let them say, nope, everything looks fine, you're fine, just eat less and exercise more. If they do that to you, I want to know, because that's not appropriate. That's not good care. So make sure as a menopausal woman, if, depending on how much you're struggling with some of these hormonal symptoms, definitely nutrition can help, exercise can help. But there is a place for hormone replacement therapy. That is not something I do at all with my coaching, but that's gotten a bad rap, I think, with some of the studies that have come out in the last 5 years, 10 years. But we use hormone replacement therapy still very often because it's still very beneficial for some of these hormonal symptoms. So don't stray from the doctor's office either if you're struggling and need a little extra help. Okay, so that's menopause in a nutshell. Hopefully I covered a lot of the basic information. There's so much to it. There's so many other hormones that are going on during menopause years. So as estrogen, progesterone decline, not only does insulin go up, but cortisol also goes up. That's why we're all stressed and overwhelmed. And our response to stress, because our cortisol level is higher, is much more heightened than it was when we were in our 20s. So a lot of stuff going on with our hormones. Leptin, ghrelin, those are the appetite hormones. Those are also being affected by our changing body composition. So much going on hormonally wise. So I just touched the surface for you, but hopefully that gets you a good start and some curiosity on what's going on in your body.